What's going on, people, and welcome to the Q&A for July 2024. This time around, we've got a hell of a lot of Deepwoken questions, because apparently I'm a Deepwoken tuber now. Not a huge fan of that. We'll be talking about that, well, when we get to it. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the questions. The first question is, unsurprisingly, pretty much exactly what I was just talking about. It's from Billy42697, and they say, do you plan to stick to Deepwoken? Considering the type of videos you make and the removal of chime skulls from your videos, I can't thank you enough for that, have been pretty well received. Do you also plan to make specific videos catering towards the Diluvian mechanism someday? The short answer is no. I don't plan on sticking to Deepwoken in that I don't want to just play this game all the time. I thought I'd made that relatively clear in my video about chime skulls, but I think a lot of people didn't see that video before posting the Q&A questions, so maybe that was a bit of an L on my end. I probably should have waited before I put the Q&A questions out there, but too late now. Anyways, to paraphrase what I said in the chime skulls video at the very end of it was, I'm pretty much sort of taking a hiatus from Deepwoken, or maybe not a hiatus, but definitely slowing things down on that end, because I've exhausted most of what I want to do with the game, and the rest of the things that I do want to do with the game, I don't know. I've played it a lot, and I don't want to get stuck in the same boat that I did with YBA, where I just can't do anything else for like literal years on end. There's other stuff I want to cover, and there's other stuff I want to talk about, so I don't want to just be stuck on Deepwoken, on top of the fact that the biggest draw for endgame and long-term Deepwoken players is the PvP, and the PvP is so heavily ingrained in the sort of fighting game essence of, well, fighting games, something that I've told people time and time again that I don't really enjoy playing. So yeah, at the end of the day, this is not going to be a Deepwoken channel. It will be a channel that covers Deepwoken and makes Deepwoken videos, but it won't be a Deepwoken channel, if that makes sense. On sort of that same vein, Thunder5591 says, will you ever do builder busts in Deepwoken once you start to get really good or semi-decent at PvP? I feel like with the immense amount of build variety in Deepwoken, I think builder busts would be perfect series to bring back. Love your videos, by the way. Thank you. As for whether or not I'll be doing builder busts for Deepwoken, highly, highly, highly doubt it. And the reason for that is that I have literally zero drive to get semi-good or really good at Deepwoken PvP. I've played enough Chime of Conflict and enough Overworld PvP for that matter that this just doesn't really interest me very much. It seems like a colossal undertaking and playing a massive multi-year game of catch-up in order to get onto the same level or even a similar level to a lot of the people playing the game nowadays. And I just don't have the mental fortitude nor care nearly enough to go out of my way to try to get super good or even remotely competent at the PvP of Deepwoken. As I've said many times, the main draw to Deepwoken for me is the videos that I make, the story videos in particular. That's been some of the most fun I've had, not just in gaming, but in my life in general for the last few months. And those story videos are based off of the lore of the world, the PvE aspects of the game, and the stories that I create myself. None of those really have much to do with PvP at all, aside from the Voidwalker/Contractor video, and that was a complete nightmare to make because it almost entirely revolved around PvP, something that is considerably harder to get good at and something that's considerably harder to get consistent results in. It just takes a long time and it's a massive undertaking that I can't justify to myself. Our next question is from Gabriel B08VC. I don't know if I pronounced that wrong, but regardless, they say, do you miss the old times of your channel, like when you used to make YBA tournaments? This is a hard question to answer. Do I miss the old times of my channel in terms of when it was very successful? Sure. But then again, that's more asking, did you enjoy when you made a bunch of money? Which, like, yeah, of course I enjoyed making a bunch of money, but there were a lot of ups and downs when it came to the quote-unquote old times of my channel. The tournaments in particular got extremely stale extremely quickly, but I only really kept doing them because people wanted me to do them. Most of the tournaments, for those of you who were around back then, would just end up being the same stands every single time in the finals because bad people were bad against specific stands. It's not like Star Platinum the World or the World Over Heaven were extremely overpowered. They were pretty good, but not extremely overpowered, and people with better stands like King Crimson or King Crimson Requiem could absolutely obliterate these people. But the problem is that the skill floor for these stands was so low that you'd have someone that was just mediocre at the game thrashing a bunch of trash cans with this stand that's only really good against mid-level to low-level players, and because we had so few high-level players, we never really saw great matches. And it sucks even more because my initial plan was to do enough tournaments that I would have enough tournament winners that I could have a tournament winner tournament, which would have the best players go up against each other. But that just never ended up coming to pass because right around the time that I hit the threshold to have that happen was also the exact time where I started to get disillusioned with the game and stopped doing tournaments. So that was really, really unfortunate. At the end of the day, there's only so much you can do trying to solo commentate a tournament and solo commentate a tournament of the same stuff you've seen over and over again. As for the other videos, I mean, my video quality has improved a lot, probably because I have more time to make the videos nowadays. I used to put out videos every single day, and so they were very low quality, and once I stopped doing that and started doing a video every other day and not making videos on weekends, well, I think my video quality has improved a lot. Obviously, videos like this are identical because there's not much that I would ever do to improve the quality, but stuff like the Deepwoken story and even most of my guides, any guide that I've made nowadays, just look at some of the guides that I made in previous. Like, look at the YBA beginner guide versus the Deepwoken beginner guide. It's not even close. It's not even remotely close. But there were a lot of cool things that came from the old times on my channel, most notably playing with my friends without having to constantly worry about whether or not people knew it was me and stuff like that. Nowadays, if I go and I play a game with my friends can often get recognized and stuff like that, and that's obnoxious, and then I have to deal with brigading, and it's not even stuff that happens very often, but the once or twice that it has happened has completely soured that entirely for me, and it's like a mindset thing over an actual realistic thing that happens. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, that's a very, very long way of answering your question. I hope that that answered it. On the topic of the olden days, Ali Waji Houdin, I don't know if I pronounced that right or if I got baited, says, do you ever miss old YBA PVP? I feel like YBA PVP used to be more fun prior to when Uzu started reworking most of the specs in some stands. For example, it was less combos and more winning short interactions and predicting the enemy. Yes, I've made an entire video about this, I'm pretty sure. I've mentioned it in tons of videos, but today's YBA doesn't even resemble old YBA, and that's really a tragedy. Honestly, a lot of the time it just comes down to like massive ultimate moves and giant things that feel unavoidable that make the game immediately feel bad to me. The second that I get hit by a haymaker when I'm playing YBA, I just facepalm and sit there and be like, why the hell did they put this in the game? What's fun about this giant move that hits you no matter what unless you have a counter? Like, that sucks. Does it have counterplay? Sure, yeah, it does. But if you don't have access to the counterplay, then no, it doesn't. And that feels terrible. It's not like there weren't things in the past that had very little counterplay, especially when it comes to insta-killing time stops, but coming from the old world of PvP to the new world of PvP feels really bad. But honestly, the thing that's ruined current YBA for me isn't even YBA. It's actually TCA, which is very, very ironic. Yeah, that's right, we're invoking the Dead Names game. TCA is back. No, but seriously, the thing about TCA that really spoiled me was number one, the consistent hitboxes, and number two, the ability to use your specs without having to hold out a dumbass item all the time. I never realized how obnoxious these two things were until I played TCA, and now it's like impossible to go back. When I went to go play YBA for that tiny, teensy little bit in order to have footage when I was talking about the update that I'm not going to play, trying to land M1 attacks was miserable because the hitboxes in that game are so horrendous that half my attacks would just go through the person at point blank range. I'd hit one or two M1s, then the third one would go through them, and the fourth one would hit? How the hell does that make any sense? And the thing is that was a constant. That's not a new thing. It's always been like that. So if I went back to old YBA PVP as the current me, I'd probably just run into a lot of the same problems I'm seeing now that I just didn't notice because I didn't have better games to compare it to, or at least better systems from different games to compare it to. The specs moves thing is also killer. Having to constantly swap on and off a bind in order to have your boxing gloves equipped, not have your boxing gloves equipped, have your Plex sword equipped, not have your Plex sword equipped. It's just an extra obnoxious thing in the game that has no reason to be there, that's been further incentivized to be there by the keyboard Jenga introduction and the fact that if you're holding a spec item, you can use things on the same binds. It's just one of those things that they should have done away with for quality of life ages ago, but no one ever thought that maybe that's a terrible idea and doesn't feel good. So yeah, I've got mixed feelings on it, but that's where I stand. The next question is from CZ Voice Acting, and they say, if you could restart and make a whole new brand, what would the game you make on it be? If YBA never failed, would you still have quit? Well, this is 2 questions, so you cheated, CZ, but I'll answer both of them. If I could restart and make a whole new brand, what game would I make it on? I can't answer this, and I think I've sort of pseudo-answered this question in the past, but what it really comes down to is the hypothetical needs to be more specific. If we're talking, if I could restart to make a whole new brand and what I made the videos on would be successful, then I would be making videos on either general gaming as a whole, so that way, I could do basically anything, or if I needed to be really specific, I would choose first-person shooters because there's always FPS games coming out, and I can play those for a very long period of time and continue to enjoy them. But at the end of the day, if we're not guaranteeing success, then as I've said before, I probably wouldn't change anything because there's no guarantee and there's so much random on YouTube. My entire existence on the platform is due to random luck. My original videos were ass, absolutely horrendous. And while yes, there's certainly more to YouTube than random luck, it's still a lot random luck. Take that from someone who only won the lottery because of random luck. So would I go back and bank everything on Tarkov? No, because it almost certainly wouldn't have worked out. I definitely made a lot of mistakes in my career, but starting off with YBA, certainly not one of them, because it literally put me where I am. As for if YBA never failed, would you still have quit? Yes and no. Would I have stopped making videos on the game? Probably not, no. Would I have stopped making videos exclusively on the game? Certainly. The thing is, just like with Deepwoken now, where I'm sort of taking a back seat and I'll be coming back for major updates and every once in a while because I think the game is good, that's probably the exact same thing that I would have done for YBA. I would have continued to cover and branch out and do other things, but when YBA had major content updates, I would certainly go back and cover them. But the reality of the day is that's not what they did. We got disrespected over and over and over and over again, and eventually I had to call their bluff and quit. I ended up coming back because they announced that YBA was making a comeback, and, well, what happened? No huge surprise there. Not only that, but the developers basically killed the game that I actually enjoyed to play and replaced it with the game that we have today. A lot of the stuff in today's YBA is barely recognizable from when I started to play, so I don't know. This is a hard question because if YBA never failed is in of itself a difficult hypothetical because would they have made all the same decisions if the game was getting regularly updated? And moreover, would we have actually ended up in a worse place if it hadn't quote-unquote failed? If we'd gotten things like the spec reworks that killed the game, or the random crits from the most recent update that have no reason to exist, if those things had come even earlier because the game was still getting updated, and that's Uzu's vision, then I might have ended up quitting earlier. You never know. Isu451 says, will you ever make a Layer 2 guide for Deepwoken? I really enjoyed your videos on Deepwoken, and the beginner's guide showed me stuff that I didn't know despite playing the game for a long time. Love the vids, keep up the good work. Layer 2 guide. Well, there's still some things that I need to do in Layer 2 in order to even do this, and even then, I can't see myself making a Layer 2 guide unless it's in really high demand. Because the thing is that Layer 2 guides are a lot more legible than any of the beginner's guides I saw. I learned Layer 2 from a Layer 2 guide, and while it wasn't the best guide out there, it worked enough that I was able to figure it out just fine. Because at the end of the day, I usually end up making guides out of necessity, in that there's not any good guides out there. But if there's already good ones that exist, there's no real reason for me to make one. But again, if it's really in high demand, I need to get some more experience, especially in Floor 2. I'd probably go in with some other people because I've never done any of the trap buildings just out of, fear of wiping my character, even though I've gone down there with throwaways. So I'd need to do that. I'd probably do it with someone else so that way I have a better idea of how that stuff works, just so that there's 100% confidence on the information that I'm giving. Pistoli, who's been on here before, and I'm pretty sure I just butchered your name again, sorry, says, do you ever intend to do more niche content once in a while, like talking about your passions or a specific subject? I just think that just you talking with a bit of editing is satisfying, and I really like the videos that got close to that. I just love to see more to the angry glass man. I'm not sure what you're talking about on that final part, but as for more niche videos, no, almost certainly not, because, well, they don't do very well, and I need to make money in order to live. Not like there aren't things that I would want to talk about. There certainly would be. Probably the most recent thing on that list would be Stormgate Co-op, which nobody in here has heard of. Nobody. I bet you that of the 20 to 50,000 people watching this video, 0 of them have heard of Stormgate Co-op. But Stormgate is an RTS game made by a lot of the same developers who worked on StarCraft 2, and StarCraft 2 had a co-op mode, and so does Stormgate. But the problem is that Stormgate's co-op mode can't even come close to holding a candle to StarCraft 2's co-op mode, despite being made by, presumably, by their own admission, the same people who were behind the scenes working on that. And I just don't see how that's possible. I don't see how they screwed up so badly, and I would talk about it at length, all of the problems comparing and contrasting, but nobody cares, because that's a borderline dead early access game that nobody's heard of and nobody cares about, so why would I make a video about it? But yeah, stuff like that, and X-Defiant, also something that I would be able to make videos on. I want to talk about the death of casual gaming and stuff when it comes to X-Defiant. I also think that would make for a great video, but nobody's going to watch it, so I'm not making that. I don't have that luxury nowadays. Next question is from Mr. Tiltson, a longtime viewer of the channel, I believe, assuming it's the same guy. They say, hey Eclipse, been a fan for a while now, and I've always wanted to ask you some stuff, but I never make it in time, so hopefully that changes today. If you had any idea as to what you would do outside of YouTube as a full-time job, would you still upload videos? What's supposing you like your job just as much you like making videos as a hobby, or any condition that puts both spectrums on the same level of enjoyment? As for whether or not I would continue doing YouTube if I had to quit, or I guess pseudo quit and get a full-time job, yes, without a shadow of a doubt. I've said this before on a different Q&A where someone asked if you just didn't have to work anymore, would you continue YouTube? And the answer was still yes. Because at the end of the day, this whole thing was a hobby long before it was my job, or I guess not even long before. I got pretty lucky pretty quickly, maybe for better or for worse. But regardless, it was my hobby before it was my job, and if I had to go back to it being my hobby and making a little bit on the side from it, then I would just go back to doing that. But I couldn't see myself ever completely quitting because YouTube in general has just sort of become part of my identity and part of my life, and so I can't see myself quitting entirely, really ever, until I'm pretty old, I guess, or I have no choice. Speaking of content creation, the real Sleek G says, future content creator here, on average, how long does a video in your A Deepwoken story series take to make? I've wanted to start a series that are similar, as in narrating over a Deepwoken playthrough as if it's a story. Well, Sleek, is going to depend on how good you are at the game and what you're making the story about, because some of my Deepwoken stories didn't take that long, and some of them took an absolute eternity, most of them taking longer rather than shorter. Now keep in mind that because YouTube is my job and I wake up and immediately get to work, usually every single day, a lot of the time it may seem like videos don't actually take as long as I make them seem like they take, but when you actually think about it in the grand scheme of things, then it sort of clicks. You have to understand that my videos are supposed to come out once every 2 days, and I don't have access to weekends, which basically means that I have a day and maybe a day and a half in order to put together a video, and then it's got to go up. And if I'm not meeting a deadline, that means I need to work further into the night. I don't get time to myself in order to do other things, and I'm not allowed to be social, pretty much. So when it came to the Deepwoken story videos, a lot of them had me working long nights and not doing anything with my friends or going out or just anything at all. It was just all YouTube all the time. I wish I could give you an exact hour number on how long it's been, but trying to think about it sort of hurts my head. I would say realistically, editing for the videos would probably take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, but the real killer for me was always the actual amount of time that I needed to record itself, because a lot of that stuff isn't recorded. It's just me playing a game without any recording. Like when it came to the Voidwalker story video, that took forever because I had to make 3 different builds, and running through 3 different progressions for one video takes a long ass time. So it's random potential things that could happen that can wipe your character, that can make things take way longer than they probably otherwise would have. The gameplay portion of the Voidwalker video probably took 4 or more hours than it should have when I got wiped, solely because I got wiped when I was pretty much at the finish line. So yeah, if you're really good at the game, I'm sure that stuff will take way less time, and if you're really good at public speaking, it'll probably take less time. I'm blessed with the fact that I can sit here without a script and sort of BS. Most of the story videos don't have a script. I just sort of had it in my brain and spoke it. But if that's not how your brain works and you can't make it sound good doing that, then you're going to have to script, and scripting takes a long time. So yeah, good luck with your videos, but beware. Second to last question comes from Nigal. And they say, what do you think about Deepwoken and other games on the platform updating bi-weekly while YBA continues with its prayers for changes mindset? Well, interestingly enough, Deepwoken actually updates weekly, not bi-weekly. I kind of wish they updated bi-weekly or longer than that, but that's something I think I've talked about before. I think Deepwoken is sort of hurt by the fact that they update weekly, because it means that when updates come out, people don't really care, and so if they waited longer and put out a whole bunch of stuff, like every month, for example, then people would come back in droves in order to check it out. But at the end of the day, the PvP tryhards are always looking for the next overpowered weapon to use in Chime, and those come out every week, so I don't know. As for YBA's prayers for changes mindset, it's really sad to look at them. And I can't say much more than that. It's just sad. Please support us. Please support us. We haven't done anything to deserve it, but please support us. They've brainwashed so many people. I'm sure these people will get put into Daily Dose of Stupid, but I got so many people on the YBA update video where I told it like it was. There were so many people who were like, at least be happy that they updated it all. How sad is that? How sad does your mindset have to be where you're like, at least they gave us some scraps? Oh my god, just depressing. And finally, the last video, which is about DDOS, is from Tomato WE7SO, who says, hi Eclipse, how long does it take to find comments to make about DDOS and whether you enjoy making them? Well, on the first part of the question, it really depends on whether or not I know a DDOS is coming or not. Sometimes I'll put out videos and I just know. And so I'll monitor that video, and as the comments come in, I'll grab them. When it comes to other Daily Dose of Stupids, a lot of the older ones specifically, I would just be pulling comments as they came in, and when I hit a certain threshold, I would make a video. So it could be a month, it could be 2 weeks, depends what I put out and how much stupid stuff that I got notified about. And finally, there were times where I would just decide I want to make a Daily Dose of Stupid video because there hasn't been one in a while, and then I'd go out of my way to look for them. And when I'm going out of my way to look for comments, it doesn't take long at all, because if you'll know what you're looking for, you'll find it. Now, whether or not I enjoy making the Daily Dose of Stupid videos, yeah, I do. I think they're a lot of fun. I like laughing at stupid people. I like hamming it up for the camera. They're some of my favorites to make. So yes, despite what it might look like on the videos themselves, 99% of that is acting, and I have a lot of fun acting for those videos. Anyways, that's the last question for today, so we're going to be wrapping things up. Naturally, of course, if you enjoyed the video, you should leave a like and subscribe, do all the cool stuff. If you didn't, don't, and with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.